Here's a little amp project that started working on a little while ago actually. It's been probably a month or something like that. I can't quite remember. This is complete trash build here. No terminal strips or anything. Just make do with what you have basically. And I also decided to use an absolutely beautiful selenium rectifier in here. So I made a 12 volt operated vibrator powered amplifier, and this is actually a 6 volt vibrator, but I found out with extensive stress testing that it doesn't mind running on 12 volts. It doesn't seem to care whatsoever. It just runs slightly faster, which really isn't a problem. So it runs at about 120 hertz, and it runs this transformer, and then it all goes here. There's a very important capacitor here. This thing must be rated for at least 600 volts. Even that is a bit on the low side, so I put a 1000 there. And that capacitor is the suppression capacitor. If you don't have these, the points will burn on the vibrator, and also you will arc over your power transformer if you don't have this. So this is very important. And feeds through this nice selenium stick here from about 1950 or something like that. Absolute beauty. Got some electrolytic filter caps. That's the main B plus filter right there, and that goes off over to the center tap of the output transformer. This is the secondary filter after a 1.8K resistor, which goes to the screen grids and preamp supply. So they run on the same supply. Normally you will have a third filter for that, but you can run your preamp section from your screen grid supply, and this is not a particularly low distortion amplifier anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And this capacitor here is the 1000 microfarad cathode bypass capacitor for the 6v6s, and here are the 6v6s. I got one Russian 6v6 and an American 6 and 6 and an American 6SL7, which is the pre-amplification and phase splitter tube. So it does everything. So it amplifies and it phase splits, and it has enough gain so you can drive it with nothing but your phone, and it's enough to drive it into slight clipping. I can't drive it to its absolute maximum, but I can drive it pretty close. And there's output transformer for it's got an 8 and 16 on tap. It's a 1750 NA from Hammond Manufacturing. I think it was designed for 6L6s, but I'm using it for 6V6 and it works just fine. And I think it's rated for 20 watts, but this can't do 20 watts. But the advantage to having a large output transformer is the iron. You'll get very good bass response. And I'm actually quite impressed by the bass response of this amp. It actually performs decent. Actually pretty good. Polyester film coupling capacitors, of course. These are my favorite to use whenever I restore and build amplifiers. I've never had one of these go bad. They are absolutely perfect. These are 0.47. I like large coupling caps because you get usually better low-end extension on amplifiers with larger coupling caps, so I like to put large coupling caps there. I've got a cathode bypass capacitor here as well. This one is quite overkill. It's a 63 volt cap and there's only 1.5 volts on it, so that cap might become unformed in the future, but I don't think that's gonna happen in 50 years. Here we have the dropping resistors for the filaments, because these are 6.3 volts and I can't wire them in series because we've got 3 tubes here. Otherwise you could wire them in series parallel if you had 4 tubes, but we only have 3 active tubes here, so I had to do this. It's a bit more lossy, but doesn't really matter. And here's the vibrator socket. You can see we have some suppression resistors there, 330 ohm. They go from each point of the vibrator to I think they go to ground, yes. So that also helps to bring down the arcing in the vibrator. It just helps it to last a bit longer. You don't necessarily need those resistors, but I highly recommend them. And excuse the wire mess. I don't want to cut the wires to the power transformer, because then I can't use it for other things if I ever want to. So yeah, it's a very simple little amplifier, and it works quite well. And the only thing I want to change, if anything, is higher B+, because it's only 220 volts right now with 13 volts on the input. And I could use more like 300 volts or something like that. I'm just using an old transformer from a power supply that's got a 24 volt secondary and 3 times 9 volts. So I just used 2 of the 9 volt windings in series to create a center tapped, and that works decently. I could use a bit higher B+, like I said, but it's not a big problem. And if we turn this thing on and let it warm up, and we listen to the loudspeaker, I'm going to unplug this because it's going to pick up a lot of noise otherwise. But if we have a listen through the speaker once it warms up here, you can see the current draw as it warms up. I've got my power supplies parallel because they're not very powerful. But here we go. There is no bass, no hum or anything. But you can hear a little bit of static in the background, which is the vibrator points making uneven contact. It's so slight though that it's like if I put the speaker here, I can't hear it. So it's like, it's surprisingly silent. And the vibrator, well, it sounds louder on video than what it actually is, but this thing is silent in real life. Yeah, you hear it, but it's like a faint, sounds like 60 Hertz hum. It's not loud at all. It's not anywhere remote irritating, if you ask me. And that's basically that. There's not much to say about it. It's about as simple as you can get, really. But what I think is fun is that I managed to make it work with just 3 tubes. I was thinking I would need to have 4 tubes, but no, 3 tubes is all you need. And I just built a general purpose 6v6 amplifier circuit. I didn't design anything new or anything like that, because there's nothing new to design. And you may notice things look weird and there's solder and stuff everywhere. That's because this chassis used to be a 6BQ5 amplifier back in the day. So, but then I scrapped it. It had absolutely nothing in it. So I just made the holes larger for the tube sockets and put a new output transformer in. Put my rectifier stick in and all this capacitor. You can see here it used to have a bunch of filter caps, because that amplifier that it originally was quite a powerful one, but it ended up absolutely sucking in terms of performance, so I ended up scrapping that thing. But yeah, this is pretty nice little amplifier. It doesn't do a whole lot of output power because of my limited B+ issue. If I had a higher B+, I could get probably 13, 14, 15 watts out of it. It only delivers like 3 watts or 4 watts right now, which is not a whole lot. It should, 6v6s in push-pull should be able to do a whole lot more. But because of my power transformer, I'm not getting a whole lot. What I could do, however, is install a voltage doubler or something in here, but then I wouldn't be able to use my nice selenium stick, and I want to use this. And yeah, I know, selenium's turning back into resistors and all that crap. This one here is actually in really nice condition electrically. There is nothing wrong with this one. I've load tested it and everything. You know, properly load tested it, and what can I say, it's an absolutely fantastic selenium rectifier that has survived through the years very well. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy with this whole thing, to be honest. And yeah, there's nothing really that can go wrong. All the solder joints are absolutely excellent because they're made by me, and I take great pride in my soldering. And like, yeah, there's just nothing that can go wrong with this amplifier. It just kinda works. And I experimented a lot with different bias resistors to find the sweet spot for this B plus and everything. I tried 330, I tried 230, I think. But ultimately I ended up settling for this, which is a 270 ohm resistor I pulled out of a junk TV. And this is the perfect resistor if you want to run these tubes at around 200 volts. 270 ohm, 5%, 5 watt resistor, more than good enough. So that's what I ended up using. And it was a bit hard to solder it because the leads are crusty, but I managed to make it work really nicely. And here we have the input ground, and there's some capacitors there which come from the preamp section, which help stabilize it just a little bit. Originally that wasn't supposed to be soldered there, it was supposed to go here to the speaker output, but it didn't work out, so I just ended up soldering it there and leaving the lead length so you can simply solder it back wherever you want in the future. But yeah, for now I'm decently happy with this. I would like to get the feedback system working properly, but it's not really such a big deal. It can clean up an amplifier's distortion a little bit, but it's not going to be audible anyway, so it's not really worth it. If you don't like the sound of feedback, just remove it. The best way to explain feedback, if you're listening on a set of speakers in your room, and it doesn't matter if it's a mono amplifier here. If you got 2 speakers in your room or something like that, or you can have a single speaker too, but it needs to be a really good one. But if you have this effect is very, very audible on a pair of good speakers, what you can do if you want to experiment with this is to remove and place your feedback. The interesting thing with feedback is that if you apply a bit of negative feedback, if you listen to a vocal song, the singer will be pushed back. So it will sound like they stand further away, and the instruments will come kind of closer, if you know what I mean. And if you disable the feedback, the singer will appear closer than the instruments. I personally like the singer closer, aka no feedback, because it gives a much more, I think, more realistic reproduction of music, because I don't think the singer wanted to be pushed back in a real band. I think the singer would like to be in front and be heard over the instruments just a little bit. That's how I think about it anyways, and I personally believe in no feedback in my amplifiers. I've experimented with feedback in other amplifiers and actually made it work stably enough. But even then, nah, I'm not happy with the sound, because it doesn't sound quite right, is what I'm trying to say. Oh yeah, little amplifier. Not a powerhouse by any means. It could definitely be a lot more though if I had a higher B+. I could probably get a good 20 watts out of it if I really wanted to push those 6v6s to red plating, but I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, like this, with this low B+, relatively low currents, these tubes are probably gonna last forever, more or less. They're not going to wear because there's not enough. There's only like 5 watts plate dissipation in each tube, so they're going to live for a very long time. Yeah, these here tubes I have, it's 6v6 and a Russian 6v6, which is weird marking. You would think it says 6N6 if you don't know what it is. But it's actually a 6v6 but a Russian version. And we got an American 6 SL7. I always say that wrong. I always say 6SN7 because I'm so bloody used to those. Yeah, my little power supplies are working real hard. Ouch! Just kidding. But yeah, I'm quite happy with the performance of this. Yeah, it can be slightly better, but this is the transformer I've got, and I'm not feeling like messing with it too much. Yeah. This is kind of cool if you ask me. You don't always run across vibrator amplifiers all that often. Radios is not all that uncommon. There's plenty of vibrator powered tube radios, but when it comes to raw power amplifiers that's designed to be used out in the field, you don't find them very often. Probably because it wasn't really any use for just a raw power amp back in the day, but today, you know, bring this with me and some speakers, and I can enjoy music with tube amplification anywhere, which I think is kind of cool, to be honest. And you know, can use this at my off-grid house and run it directly off of my battery bank. No need for power inverter. And I could, you know, this thing would be a great conversation starter at events and stuff. Bring this there and let it run off of a 12-volt battery, and just play some background music to a pair of efficient speakers. This thing is gonna be loud enough for a pretty good area, actually. So you can do a lot of fun things with mobile power amplifiers, and this is a mobile vacuum tube amplifier. You know, I could even put it in my car if I really wanted to. That would be kind of cool, actually. Not that many people that would have an actual vacuum tube amplifier in their car. I think that could be kind of cool. But yeah, it's my little vibrator powered 12-volt operated tube amplifier with a pair of 6v6 output tubes.